So we're in this series called Believe in Me, and it's a series about faith. And just to let you know, big picture, where we've been, where we're going, we're starting the year really the big meta questions about God and the universe and faith. And then as both the fall moves forward and then even into the spring, we will dip into all sorts of subjects within this realm of faith. We'll talk about suffering, and we'll talk about the Bible, and we'll talk about church hurt and hypocrisy and all sorts of things like that. And so if I haven't talked yet about something that you're interested in, just know that over the course of this year, we are going to talk about quite a few things, just not all at the same time. So in this opening set of sermons on Believe in Me, we have 2 more weeks in this first batch, and then we're going to take a break, talk about something else for a few weeks, and then we'll come back later and talk about more things related to faith. So today I'd like to start with a thesis, an idea that I think is generally true all the time, or at least in modern society, but I have felt the acuteness of this thesis very much so in the last few weeks. And the thesis is this: civilization is thriving, but humanity is sick. And those are happening at the same time. And in a sense, I feel like they're always happening. So, for example, to the first point, I truly do believe we're in a time where civilization itself is unreal. And we are thriving. We're flourishing. I was talking to the adult daughter of one of our shepherds just a week ago and asking her what she was doing in life, and she works for Walmart. And I said, "What do you do for Walmart?" And she said, "Well, I'm in charge of drone launches, like going to stores and launching these drone sites." And I was like, "Oh, I knew that was going to happen in the future. You're saying that's happening now?" She's like, "Yeah. In certain cities, it's here. Like, you can get on your phone and you can just type, 'I want Cheerios flown to my door,' and boom, like it will happen." And that's amazing to me. Like, I knew it was coming, but it's already here. We are living in the era where you can have basically anything you want flown to your house. Civilization's thriving. I read this article last week. This is a picture of a man who's actually a quadriplegic. He's in his early 30s. He just did this new surgery where they went into his brain and they put this electric pad of some sorts on the part of his brain associated with movement. And so now he can think, walk, and then somehow the activity of the brain triggers this pad, which then sends signals, I don't know, maybe be Bluetooth or something, to this machine, and he can walk. Like, that's amazing. We live in this era where we're just, technologically speaking, medically speaking, it's unreal, the time that we live. And yet we all know that's not the whole story. When we witnessed the assassination last week of Charlie Kirk, one of the things that many of us felt is simply something's wrong. In fact, as I just read various people's reactions to this horrific event, this was a sentiment that came up over and over and over. Something's wrong with the whole country. From the hatred always bubbling underneath the surface that we all know is there, to our inability to treat people with dignity, to even just the reality that so many of us truly look at the enemy or the other in such disparaging ways. Like, there's just something's wrong. Something's wrong with us emotionally. Something's wrong with our minds. And so I think it's true. Civilization, flourishing, thriving. Humanity, we're pretty sick. And this goes beyond just stories. Like, the data actually supports this. So here, let me show you a few charts here. This first one, this is global hunger levels over time. It's actually gotten way better, especially in the last few decades. Even as recent as 1990, 38% of the world still lived below the poverty line. That number is 8% today. Now, that still means there's a lot of work to do, but this is good. Like civilization is in a sense getting better when it comes to world hunger. This next chart is U.S. stats longitudinally on violent crime. And so you'll see that overall, it's actually getting better. And again, there's a lot of work to be done on this front, but this is good news. Civilization is flourishing, it's doing well. Here's another chart on life expectancy. And so you can go back to 1900. This is worldwide. 1900, life expectancy was 32 years old. It's crazy. 32. That number today worldwide is 73. So we've made a lot of progress in society when it comes to living longer. It's actually amazing to think about all the advances that have been made. Or even just another niche subject. Think about travel for a minute. So in 1989, 3% of U.S. citizens had passports. That number today is 50%. And so the reality is, we truly live in an unprecedented era when it comes to opportunity and health and vocation and leisure and luxury. We live in one of the most, if not the most remarkable eras of human history. It's amazing what civilization, the level that it has got to. But not all the stats support that. In fact, if you'll look a little closer at that life expectancy chart, if you notice there's actually a dip at the very end. This is the last few years, this is recently. So in most nations, the life expectancy has increased for decades until recently when there's been a dip. Well, sociologists try to explain this, and what they believe has happened is they called this dip, it is attributed to what they call deaths of despair. And you might have heard about this, but it's suicide, overdose, and alcohol-related deaths. And those actually are increasing. And so, for example, in the U.S. in 2024, just this past year, 50,000 people died by suicide. 80,000 people died from overdose, and 180,000 or 170,000 died from deaths related to alcohol. So something's wrong. Civilization is flourishing, and yet humanity is very, very sick. And underneath this, we also experience what we especially talked about coming out of COVID, which was this epidemic of loneliness and depression and isolation. Like something's right and something's wrong all at the same time. And we all experience this. I read a book just a few years ago, a really good book called You Are Not Your Own by a guy named Alan Noble. And he's talking about all these problems, and he captures the essence of the sickness of humanity with this quote. He says, "Ask an honest parent, student, or employee, and they'll tell you that their goal for the day is to survive, just to get through the day, or to make it through existence is a thing to be tolerated. Time is a burden to be carried. And while there are moments of joy, nobody seems to actually be flourishing except on Instagram, which only makes us feel worse. Strikingly, even as our standard of living in the West continues to rise, our quality of life doesn't." And so we all experience this. You probably, maybe not every day, but I'm sure you've had some days where you go to bed at night and you think, what am I doing? Why am I here? What is going on with my life? This is so bad. It's so hard. So we're like, how did we get to this point where we can be so advanced technologically and medically, and yet in our inner souls just be floundering? What happened? Now, it's easy, if you're looking for targets to blame, it's easy to blame the digital revolution, and I do think that's contributed to it. The great blessing of the iPhone is it makes people who are far across the planet feel like they're next to you. And the great curse of the iPhone is it makes people who are right next to you feel like they're across the planet. So it has brought disconnection and fragmentation, isolation. We've exchanged personal relationships for personal entertainment. So I do think that digital revolution has had this, in fact, negative effect on the mental health of the world. But I don't think that's the underlying cause for everything we're experiencing right now in life. I think the deeper problem is what one person called the meaning crisis. So this is philosopher John Vervaeke, and he coined this term just a few years ago. And he said that the meaning crisis is not only marked by the disconnection with each other, but even more than that, the meaning crisis is brought on because we have lost connection with any larger story or narrative. Like, there's no agreed upon meta-narrative by which we all find the trajectory and journey of life through. It's just not there anymore. And this has made us have this meaning crisis. Now, he says it didn't happen overnight. It actually took not just decades. This has been developing over a few centuries. And one way to understand what has happened, here's a metaphor or an illustration to help us understand what's happened. You remember the original Wizard of Oz? So most of that movie, we're led to believe that there is this godlike figure with this deep, booming voice calling all the shots. And we're scared of that figure. But then you get to the end of the movie, and literally a curtain is pulled back, and you realize, oh, that's just an eccentric man with a microphone. And so we don't have to be scared anymore of this figure looming out there somewhere. Now we know. And so this, in a sense, is what has happened over the last few hundred years, where society used to believe, wow, we used to believe in God. But then we found logic and reason and science, and so then we walked away from all those superstitious beliefs. And now we're liberated to make our own progress in the world. So where it used to be, and this is how the story goes, it used to be that we would get scared of the weather. Oh, that must mean God's mad at us. But now we know it's the water cycle, and that just happens. And it used to be that we get all nervous when we got sick, and this disease must be some malevolent power cursing me because I've done something wrong. But now we know that's not true. You just need to wash your hands, be aware of germs, and then you'll be a healthy person. And so over time, we've just pushed God out of the picture. Now, at first, this move, again, society-wide, this move at first was liberating. Because for many people, this move away from God made them believe or realize, I'm free. Like, I don't have this cosmic bully in the sky giving me some arbitrary, archaic moral code that I have to operate by. Now I can just do whatever I want to do. I can be whoever I want to be without this moral straitjacket. And so it's liberating at first, but then over time, now we're starting to experience some of the consequences of this meaning crisis. And so to put these various thoughts together, my theory is that underneath, at the very bottom layer, is this new, I would say a new worldview maybe, called materialism. In fact, materialism is a worldview which says that truth is only what you see with matter and motion. So unless you can put it in a test tube, it's not real. So people, yes, you're real, atoms are real, protons and electrons are real, solid, liquid, gas, that's real. But anything beyond that, that's just an illusion. This is the strict world of materialism. And again, at first, this is amazing, this is wonderful. But not once you get further and further into it. See, I think materialism has actually led to the meaning crisis. And it's the meaning crisis on top of which we see all these symptoms of mental health and human sickness. I think there's something actually wrong with this world view. We don't feel good about the world because innately as human beings, we sense that there's something more. We're just not quite sure how to explain that in the world today. So there's a philosopher named Bertrand Russell, and he's an atheist. And he's trying to give almost a motivational speech to, like, how do you get motivated to live your life when there's nothing out there? And here's what he says. Man's origin, growth, hopes and fears, his loves and beliefs are but the outcome of accidental collections of atoms. No heroism, no intensity of thought and feeling can preserve an individual life beyond the grave. All the labors of the ages, all the devotion, all the inspiration, all the noonday brightness of human genius are destined to extinction in the vast death of the solar system. Only within the scaffolding of these truths, only on the firm foundation of unyielding despair, can the soul's habitation henceforth be safely built. Wow. Okay, so that's his way of saying, here, this is what we got going for us. If you want to build this healthy soul, you just embrace despair. That's what you do. There is no courage, love, those things don't matter. We're all spinning into oblivion, so just wake up, realize it means nothing, go and live your life. This is why we have a meaning crisis. Like, we know, at least part of us knows there has to be more than that. See, materialism, again, just to summarize here, as a worldview, materialism at the beginning feels liberating. Oh, I can do what I want. But when you sit in it long enough, you're like, oh, there's not a lot there. See, materialism actually makes these what I would call really cruel trades. So if you were sitting with a strict materialist describing your life, then that materialist would say something like, oh, you thought that was love? That's not love. That's just oxytocin. Oh, you thought that was laughter? Oh, it's not laughter. That's just some endorphins in your brain. Oh, you thought that was a feeling of protection that you had for a loved one? No, that was just this adrenal gland in your brain. Just a product of the reptilian mind. That's all it is. See, that's the cruel trade of materialism. It cuts off the roots of everything that we sense is meaningful. And it reduces things to their smallest parts. And materialism is a reductive worldview. The only things that are true and real are what you can reduce down to the particle level. So here, let me give you an example of this. Look at this painting on the screen. So what is this? From a purely materialistic worldview, all this is blue pixels on a canvas. Now that we're seeing on a screen, that's it. Just oil-based paint, pixels, that's all it is. There's nothing beyond it. And yet, you and I know that's not fully true because it's a Van Gogh painting and we look at it and think, well, that's sad. It's grief, and it makes you think about maybe someone that you lost, or maybe think about the last time you were sad, the last time that you buried your face in your hands. There's much more to this painting than simply blue pixels on a canvas. And yet that's the illusion that materialism actually gives us as well. There's really nothing in the world except what can be reduced down to the smallest part. So all this leads up to here's the first main idea of this message. The reductive view of reality does not have a monopoly on reality. There's more. And this is where materialism, there's a weakness here. It doesn't play nice with other worldviews. Unless it's matter in motion, unless it's atoms, then it doesn't have any room for any other worldview. And yet, just by living a day in your life, that there's more than protons and neutrons and electrons. You just take a walk with someone that you know really well, or fall in love, or watch a hummingbird, or play the piano, or hold a baby, or give somebody a hug for more than 2 seconds, or watch somebody get rejected, or watch somebody get bullied, and you'll know that there's a lot more to life and to reality than simply protons and neutrons and electrons. There's so much meaning in the world, and so part of why we're so sick as humanity is that we've lost sense of this story. We have no story anymore. And so we're just floundering, trying to pull all these other things into our perspective that, well, I need something to hold on to. So maybe it's political salvation. Maybe that's it. I think that all these political leaders, certainly one of them has to be Jesus. And so I'm just going to put all my emotional eggs into that basket, and maybe that'll get me where I want to go. Well, boy, have we found out that worldview is found wanting in the last few decades of life. See, we're all searching for something. And all I'm saying today is that this materialistic worldview It's not all that it's cracked up to be. In fact, you know why, as another example of all this, you know why the TV show House, you know why this show was so popular? It wasn't just because it's pretty interesting plot lines. Every episode they're trying to figure out that some rare disease and can't figure out the diagnosis, and then finally you figure out what it causes it, and by the end, usually, someone is cured from some terrible disease. But it's not just the plot that makes the show so compelling, it's the character. House himself. House is actually an atheist by his words, but he's a believer by his actions. So he famously said in one episode, he said, "Human beings are a collection of cells in a bag of waste with an unknown expiration date." And then yet by his behavior, what does he do every episode? He does anything possible to save people. He breaks rules. He fights through his own drug addiction because he desperately wants to save people. He has incredible compassion. And so the reason the show is so compelling is because part of us thinks, well, maybe this is all that there is. Maybe we really are only in a material world. But there's another part of you that truly thinks, no. I know there's something else out there. That's what makes the show so compelling. So putting this all together, the reason that humanity is sick and suffering is because we no longer have a unified story. We no longer have a story that makes sense of our complexity, a story which provides orientation, not just to protons and neutrons, but to sadness and to love and to beauty and to wonder and to justice and to loss. This is why we need the story of Jesus. The story of Jesus does make sense of life. This is why I believe the Christian worldview is the most compelling worldview in the world, because it makes so much explanatory sense of what it means to be human. Like, remember what John 1 says, in the beginning was the Word. In the Greek, word for word is logos. And so this text is telling us that at the very beginning there was the mind, there was rationality, there was logic, there was something behind all that we see. And so therefore, when we look at reality, we can, based on this worldview, say that on the one hand, the galaxies and the atoms and the organisms all came from this mind. But we can also say that it's not just the galaxies and the matter and the solids and liquids and the gas. We can also say that love and beauty and awe and meaning and loss, all of that also comes from this same logos, this same mind. And then in this story that the Jesus worldview offers, human beings are not cosmic accidents. We're not just randomly here. We have purpose, we have agency, we have dignity. We've been made in the image of God. And we've been invited by this God to partner with him to move forward in this story of the universe, to work against injustice and pain and suffering, and work towards renewal, rescue, restoration, not because we're marching into oblivion, but because we're marching forward to a new heavens and a new earth. This is a compelling story. And a world that is sick and a world that is stuck in a meaning crisis needs a really compelling story. In fact, there's an amazing verse in Acts 14 I'd like to read to you. There's a lot of on-ramps to faith. So in the last few weeks, I've been talking more about logic and science. All today's message is really, if I had to summarize it, it would simply be this. One way to have a stronger faith is to take the on-ramp of meaning. Like, you know your life means something. Well, there's a reason that you feel that way. It's because your life comes from God. Meaning can be an on-ramp to faith. And so look at this text from Acts 14. So Paul is here in this city where people don't believe in Yahweh. In fact, this is Lystra, and they believe in the Greek panoply of gods. So they worship Zeus and Hermes. That's the town that they're in. And Paul is trying to figure out, how do I connect these people to the one true God? And so here's what he says. Verse 17, yet he, God, has not left himself without testimony. That's a really important word. God's giving evidence of his own nature to you. Here's how. He has shown kindness by giving you rain from heaven and crops in their seasons. Okay, let's pause here. Just think about this. What exactly is rain? Well, it's two hydrogen atoms and an oxygen atom, H2O. That's rain. Okay, well, what else is rain? Well, it's necessary for agriculture back in the day. That's true. Okay, well, what else? What's rain? Well, it's one part of the water cycle. That's true as well. What else? What's rain? Rain is the testimony of God. Like, that can all be true. Like, every single one of those statements is true. It's evidence, it's testimony. God wants his people to know who he is, so he gives them rain. Rain, it's the wink of God. It's the fingerprint of God in the world. That can be true at the exact same time as water being H2O. They're both true at the same time. Well, then Paul goes on. More evidence, more testimony. He says, the list continues. He provides you with plenty of food. And then, I love this line, he fills your hearts with joy. So what is the function of joy in this verse? Paul is saying joy is a testimony to the joy giver. Like, Paul is saying to all these people in his audience, you have experienced joy from a God that you didn't even know existed. And so just put yourself in the scene on this particular day. Who's in the audience here? Maybe there's a mom in the audience who just watched her toddler take his first step right before she got on her way to go worship at the temple of Zeus, and she felt joy. And maybe there's a couple that just had their first kiss the night before, and they feel joy. And maybe there's a boy that just got a new pair of leather sandals, and he's wearing them for the first time, and he feels joy. And maybe there's a grandfather who the night before had the best lamb chops he's had all year long, and he feels joy. And so what's the logic of this speech? Paul is saying the joy that you experience in everyday life comes from a joy giver. There's someone behind it. In other words, the thesis here is that meaning has a source, and you can actually come to know that source. And so for those of you that are wrestling with faith, like, I don't know if I can believe in all this, just look at your life. Think about how meaningful it is. Think about how much you love your friends or your family. Like, just think about all those experiences that you have in life that create wonder and joy and awe and sadness. They come from somewhere. Meaning has a source. And the amazing thing is there's been so many people in the last few years that have actually come to faith in Jesus through this on-ramp. It's the on-ramp of meaning. So, for example, there's a guy in Australia. His name's Robbie, and I love his mini testimony. He says, I remember on one occasion when I nearly lost my atheism simply while listening to a Beethoven symphony and watching the sunrise over the Sydney Harbor. I could not understand how such an experience could be explained by a material world without some form of independent, conscious awareness. So he wanted to be an atheist. He couldn't maintain that position while listening to that music, watching that sunset. Something's got to be out there. Or here's another just brief mini testimony. I got to listen to this lady give this incredible testimony. She's a comedian, she's an author, she's hilarious. She grew up just anti-Christian, that they're crazy idiots, they don't know what they're talking about, but it's remarkable why she became a believer. And by the way, Robbie took that initial incident of looking at the sunrise, looking at the sunset, listening to the symphony. He did take the next step and he became a believer in Jesus. So here's Jen Fulweiler. This is just one part of a really great testimony. She says, I believed that the physical world around us that we can touch and observe is all that there is. And then here's what changed for her. She had a child. She had a baby. And she was in the hospital holding that baby. And she reflects on that experience with these words. I looked down and thought, what is this baby? And I thought, well, from a pure and atheist, materialist perspective, and that's what some of you have been bored with this sermon, but that's the worldview we're talking about today. From a pure atheist and materialist perspective, he's just a collection of randomly evolved chemical reactions. And I realized if that's true, then all the love that I feel for him, it's all nothing more than chemical reactions in our brains. And I looked down at him and realized that's not true. That's not the truth. That's a profound experience to hold this baby and to feel this love and to realize that, wait, if there's no God, then this love is meaningless. And so I'll end by simply saying this. Now, for many of you, probably most of you listening to this, you're like, I totally get it. Like, I'm already a believer. Of course I believe in God and Jesus in this story that you're talking about. But I know there's a handful of you where belief's hard. And you're, I don't know about this. And you kind of waffle, you go back and forth. You're just not quite sure if you can believe any of this is true. So here's what I would say. If you could, obviously belief and unbelief is very complicated, but if you can unravel some of that unbelief, and I don't want to dismiss it, but if for just a minute, if you could maybe set to the side the hypocrisy you've experienced by someone you trusted, or if you could set aside some really hard question you have about the Bible. And those are important. I'm not saying they don't matter, but if you could set this aside for just a minute, and if I could just speak to the part of you that does believe that there's something more than what we see, like even if 1 ounce of you thinks that's true, then don't you have a responsibility to explore that? Like if there's even just a fraction of a chance that there's something out there that we can't see that's real, don't you owe it to yourself? Don't you owe it to the people that you love to actually take that next step and try to explore? Like, wait, I think something's out there. I'd like to know what that is, who that is. And here's where I would say, I'm not a perfect person. This is not a perfect church, but the story of Jesus is so compelling. It'll give you an anchor. It'll give you, like, materialism will tell you how your bed is made, but Christianity tells you how to get out of your bed in the morning. It gives you a purpose. It gives you a reason. It gives you meaning, like why you're even here in the first place. And we need that. We're creatures which crave meaning. We crave narrative. We crave story. And I'm telling you, the story of Jesus is so compelling. And so if you've held it kind of at arm's distance for a lot of your life, I'm just saying maybe it's time to give it another try, because remember what Jesus said in John 10, I've come that they can have life and that they can have it more abundantly. Jesus doesn't come to put this stringent moral straitjacket on you to make you miserable. He comes so you can have an amazing life. And if you've never explored that, again, I think you owe it to yourself to seriously look at the person of Jesus and ask, who is he? And why would he be worth following? Because I truly believe that he is. So we're going to worship now, and 2 of our shepherding couples are going to be in the back 2 atriums, and if you need to talk and pray with one of our shepherds, they'd love to listen to you and pray with you this morning. If you'd like to get baptized and start your journey with Jesus this morning, I'll be down front to receive you. Let's stand and sing.